With us in studio is none other than Steven Shapiro. Some background about our very distinguished guest. Steven speaks all over the world. I believe he's been to over 50 different countries, speaking on the topic of innovation. He's an NSA Hall of Famer, the National Speaker Association. Out of over 53,000 speakers, there are only 237 people in the Hall of Fame. Every year they induct only 5 people out of 53,000, and Steven is one of them. Steven has written 5 books to date on innovation, and tonight we're going to talk about his book, Personality Poker. You got to hear this, folks. What exactly is the personality poker game and why your company needs to understand this? How to enhance your employees' performance, which affects every company, and why personality is the key to success. With that intro, we give a very warm welcome, Steven Shapiro. Steven, thank you for joining me here on Mind Your Business.
It is my pleasure. So excited.
Well, thank you. Coming off the presentation, and when people asked, how would I describe it in one word? So I said, I need 2. Thought-provoking. That's the way because, I loved when you talked about reframing the question. I'll give you a simple example. Many times people had, call me up for advice on what career they should go into. And it's a very vague question. What career should I go into? And I find myself just like not being able to answer the question. And I've actually then come back, but I had the epiphany as when you spoke and made it so clear, I realized I have to just turn it back to them and say, okay, figure out what you excel at, what you enjoy, and then come back, package the question in a much more focused way, as opposed to what industry should I go into? How am I supposed to answer that question? But if you say, well, I took courses for this, I have a BA in that, and whatever it is, then I could perhaps say, maybe you're good for A, B, or C, or take one of these, tests or whatever in order to figure it out. But just to have a question so open-ended is not something that even leads to a good conversation. Maybe I could even just open with that, about the importance of reframing and asking a good focused question.
Yeah, so as human beings, we have 2 default ways that we ask questions. One is they're really big, broad, and abstract, like what career should I go into? What kind of job should I take? Or sometimes they're so specific that there's no possible range of solutions. I mean, it's basically a solution masquerading as a question. Right. So those are the 2 ways we typically ask questions, and we need to just get better at not doing either of those. And in the process of that, what happens is when you reframe questions, the funny thing is, if you're struggling to solve a problem, sometimes just changing the question, the solution will become apparent. So it will not only just give you different solutions, it may help you find solutions in faster ways.
Now I want to go to your book, Personality Poker. Now, one second. That's a book. That's a game. Explain it to me.
It's a book. It's a game. It's whatever. I mean, so we actually sell the cards, which is the main thing that we do. The book, we published it for a little while, but when people buy the starter kit, they get the book as part of that. It's more of like an instruction manual than anything else.
Now, we've heard the expression opposites attract. Is that true?
The reality is opposites detract. So there's a lot of scientific evidence that shows that birds of a feather like to flock together.
Okay.
And the reason for that is a survival mechanism. When we are with people who are similar to us, there feels like there's safety. We understand each other. We have common language. We have common beliefs. Things get done. So when there's commonality, there's efficiency. And that feels safe. The problem is, for innovation, it might move us in the wrong direction. Because if we're focused on commonality, then we don't get the diversity and divergent thinking necessary to move a business in a different direction.
So when it comes to growing a business, what's the downside?
So, I always find it interesting. The word culture, which is what we use a lot in companies, is related to the word cult. And you think about cults. I mean, the whole point of a cult is to not think. Because everybody thinks the same way, acts the same way, talks the same way. In companies, we use the same 3-letter acronyms. So this is what we are taught to do inside of companies, is to create cultures. And that's not necessarily bad, but if the world around you is changing, which I promise you it is, then you can't keep on driving the past into the future. And so we need to bring new perspectives, divergent perspectives together in a powerful way to drive change, because we need different ways of thinking and different skills in order to drive innovation.
Now, I know you developed something called personality poker. You just mentioned it. It's a game. It's a book. As a way of addressing chronic sameness, within organizations. Now, you touched on it because of culture and cult, but perhaps you could describe this chronic sameness.
Yeah, so if you look at the people that most companies hire, they hire people who fit the mold.
Right.
And I always say that if you only hire people who fit the mold, the company will eventually grow mold. So what happens is we keep on, again, we're wired to perpetuate the past. And by hiring people who fit the mold means we're perpetuating those past beliefs. And then also to compound it, when you look at performance management systems, they tend to reward particular behavioral attributes to the exclusion of others. What that means is not only are you having a tough time attracting certain people because you're only looking to hire people who fit the mold, the people who don't fit the mold that somehow get in, you're not doing anything to retain them because they don't feel like they're part of a home. And so inside of organizations, they're designed from start to begin, start to end, to repeat what they've always done. And that is the death, the death for any company is when your past success drives you into the future.
Now, if I could just ask, on the flip side, if I may, just to play devil's advocate, is it important for a company to have processes in place, or would you say that kills innovation?
Oh, I'm a huge process fan.
You are? So how would you explain that?
Well, without processes, you don't have efficiency. It's the question of the level of the process. So I'm a sax player, jazz sax player. And I remember I used to give speeches. I don't do it anymore, but I used to give speeches where I'd have some classical music played. So classical music is a process. It's an orchestrated, repeatable, predictable process with no variation. So I remember this one event I did. We hired a jazz band, and I did not talk to the jazz band before the event. They were hired for the event, but I didn't talk to them. And in the middle of my speech, I had them come out, and they had no idea what they were going to do. And I said, okay, 12-bar B-flat blues, I'm going to count it off. And I just started counting it off. And we played for about 10 minutes, just going back and forth. So that's still a process.
Right.
It's a process that we each understood. We could collaborate, but we could also innovate and improvise. And that's the key, is having processes that allow you flexibility, not rigidity.
I love the honor of interviewing C-level executives and sharing their great advice and perspective on Mind Your Business. I'd love to get your feedback. Post it in the comments below and subscribe. You'll never miss an edition of Mind Your Business.